Howdy, howdy. Today I'm looking to talk about something that's been bothering me recently, and it is this underlying suspicion that the new right is destined for failure. And I think one of the main reasons that I do think this, and it's something I've been seeing a lot, you have figures like Nick Fuentes, Clavicular, Andrew Tate, and they get together and they go to the club and you know whatever. But whenever they actually sit down and you see them talk to each other, they're debating each other. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw. It was before Nick Fuentes went to that Miami club, and he was debating Clavicular, and he just got totally destroyed. And he's trying to explain to him, like why you should support white nationalism, and he's in Clavicular the whole time. He's just like, why should I care, right? Because in his eyes, I mean, he's grown up in this society where he has to be performative. He has to put on a show and work in his best interests, which is understandable. You're not gonna convince somebody to dedicate themselves to a cause that they, at a surface level, do not have much interest in. And I think that's interesting because it really is one of many issues with the new right. I mean, you have I call them like the clavicular aligned class of people. But on the other hand, you have the Tatists. Now, the Tatists are interesting because they're just, well, they're effectively just another class of men that seek to build for themselves some success and purpose. It's the same alignment, but it's a different path. Except with the Tatists, they hold, contrary to the Graper movement, a very, I guess you could say, anti-Christian worldview. And I find this interesting because Tate himself adopted Islam. Now, I don't know if you ever listen to Nick Fuentes, you actually watch his live streams and his statements. He's very clear about the fact that he wants nobody in the government that is not a Christian. And I see this and I'm like, so you have Clavicular, he's a white guy, but he doesn't care about your issues. He's looking out for himself. You have Andrew Tate. I think he's half black. You know, and he kind of cares because he's been afflicted by the system, but ultimately he does not serve your best interests. And then you have what, like Sneeko? I think he's also half black, and that's just a problem in of itself. I mean, whenever you start introducing like mixed interests or alternate interests into your ideology, you're gonna end up with some problems. And this is very prevalent because, I mean, evidently, people of mixed race, they have warped identities. They have trouble finding belonging. Um, and I guess what I'm trying to say with that, whenever you create a political alignment that facilitates these different interests, it starts to eat itself alive. And I think that's exactly what's happening with our government. Like the new right that's forming right now is at best like a temporary alliance that is it's bound for disaster. I mean, because where you're gonna come into contact, they might be aligned for now, but sooner or later, whenever the philosophical foundations of these people come into collision with each other, even if the right does managed to secure some degree of influence in our politics, um, I've been given reason to believe that it's going to be eaten from the inside by alternative interests. And you can already kind of see that with people like, well, I guess I should start with the MAGA movement. It was pretty much like a patriot nationalist line movement up until the fact, uh, well, I guess up until 2015, 16. I don't quite remember when. Well, for one, most of the far right folks had got imprisoned over Jan 6, which I believe was later, but still. Um, but we started to see these, what do you call them? Black conservative figures. We started to see, uh, and they kind of already pre-existed, but like Jewish influencers in the movement, which ultimately serve their own interests. And I think the black conservatives are more interesting for this fact because at best, they are, okay, let me put it this way. Right-wing people do not like blacks, okay? And this isn't like me saying I hate blacks or whatever. I don't particularly care about that statement. But what I am trying to say is that people generally do not like them. And whenever things do take a turn, like whenever the far right does get into power, which these same black conservatives or black reactionaries are advocating for, I mean, it is effectively, it's suicidal. I mean, they're putting themselves in a situation where, at best, they are going to become second-class citizens. Like, they might be accepted. And I am serious about that. I do think that it's true. I think that it is completely idiotic. I think some of them are just stupid enough to believe it, to actually go through with it, but I think most of them are just grifters, honestly. But that's like one of the main points I guess I make about the new right is how there's already these divisive interests inside of the group that are already kind of picking at the seams. I mean, you've seen it, like with the clavicular case. And you have people that just don't care. Um, and then obviously you have like Jewish influence. You had Ben Shapiro and the right. Well, before MAGA, he had completely detested Trump, but conveniently aligned himself in order to hold some prevalence. And it really is clear that he is literally just a pawn for the state of Israel. So that couldn't be more obvious. And it's usually more nuanced than that. You usually don't have um, Jewish influencers or lawyers or judges that are uh, so clearly aligned to the Jewish interest. It's usually like it comes in certain undertones. But I do feel like that's where it starts to sneak in. And you have people like Nick Fuentes who are like, oh yeah, I'm not anti-Semitic. I have Jewish judges, and Jewish lawyers. I have Jewish friends. I'm like, okay, I don't care, for one. Like that's unimportant to me. But I guess that's in a way not true because it's very important for the fact that he has allowed his movement and probably his ideology to be afflicted by these same people. And the reasons why Jewish individuals would support him is actually really complicated, and I have to talk about it on a different video. Because Jewish thought is really, ultimately, it's very diverse and complicated, but it all goes to serve a common interest, which is why I really do not agree with the thought of including such people in your movement. And why I do ultimately think that it serves as a kind of like a catalyst to further their own interests down the line. Like when the new right does get in power, like I said, it's gonna be eaten alive or it's gonna eat itself. Now I don't think it would be as violent but I do think it would be inherently violent, and this is mostly due to the fact that in the far right, um, they facilitate a certain belief that, or at least oftentimes, the the will of the stronger, or the will to power. This idea that you can effectively play for power. Now, I don't think it would be like, anything resembling, say, the Spanish Civil War. I don't think we'd devolve into chaos over it. But I do think it would just turn into something of a disaster, honestly. I really don't think that, say, Nick Fuentes is a Catholic autocracy, theocracy, whatever, is going to be a realistic outcome in any foreseeable future. Which I guess is not too important since I've listened to him a lot, and he kind of he has this idea that he probably is never going to be a leader, but he can work as a catalyst to build off into the far right and establish an ideological order, I guess. I mean, recently he had this live stream, and he's talking about how he wants to have a shop set up, and he wants to have different books and different books and merch, and you know uh, access to knowledge. He wants to create a doctrine. He wants to create I guess, Groyper library, which is something that I always kind of questioned why these far right movements never tried to actually implement and create a coherent collective ideology, which ultimately I believe is kind of, at least in my mind, why Nick Fuentes is deceptively terrifying. It's for unique. It's for a unique reason. I don't think that he is compromised per se, but I think it's possible. But I do think that his alignments, um, not only do they allow him to exist at all, but they do they do work to serve an alternative uh, worldview that most of us have zero interest in. And I guess that can be best explained through his views on American imperialism. Nobody wants to go to war in foreign countries. But then you have Nick Fuentes up here, and he's like, you know, uh, doing hoops trying to justify it, which is like whatever, right? But I feel like in the end, it's destined to damn him. Which I guess I don't totally actually mind. I don't particularly. I don't particularly like him. I think some of his ideas are good, but I think the sort of inter-ethnic nationalist coalition that he's trying to facilitate is just, it's not going to work. I, I really just, I don't think it's going to work. Something else has to happen. I think it might exist to further a narrative, right? But it's not going to last. And people are speaking about it in this way. You go on Twitter, for example, or different live streamers and YouTubers, and they're saying, this is the new right, and we all need to take our position in it, right? And I just, it might still exist, like, on paper, I guess, in the next, like, 10 years. But I don't think it'll exist nearly in the same form. I think, like, different powers are going to take over. Either it's going to liberalize in order to save itself, or it's going to just eat itself apart. And I think ultimately, um, I think some people within it might actually understand this. Because there's kind of like this unspoken um, understanding between different nationalist groups that well, how do I say this? That they have their own interests, right? And that there can be a temporary alignment, but ultimately, like if they had to pick sides, if it was, say it was the Purge and it was whites against blacks, ultimately, um, your your black groiper friend would not stand with you. And if he did, he was a moron because at the end of the day, he's advocating for what is effectively social political suicide. And I don't know, that's just something I found important, something I wanted to speak on. I guess it's really just sort of a complaint, and as of now, I can't think of much of a solution except for people within the far right, I guess like ideology abroad, to make a desperate attempt to try to um, advocate for their own, try to gain influence within it, because it's kind of unstable right now. It's sort of a mess. Everybody knows that MAGA is dying, and the the new alternative right, it's going to be primarily formed by younger people, and this serves some good purpose. I mean, it's more energetic for one, but a lot of the people within it, they're not very educated, and I say that, not in like, you don't have a degree, you're not an expert, um, but they don't they don't self-educate. They don't educate themselves in regards of ideology or um, I guess like different social studies. Some of them do. Some of them don't enough to a degree that it is that it is required. I don't think many people understand that to be an influencer on these topics, you really need to know your stuff. And I think the reason why people like Nick Fuentes right now are dominating so much is because he is one of the few people that really understands this. I think he really um, he knows what he's talking about, and he could do this. He can do this much to the detriment of um, people who would oppose him. You might see him on. I think recently on Twitter it was Nick Fuentes calling Zoomer historian a moron. Right? Zoomer historians, he's like if you don't know, he's like this how do I explain it? He used to have a YouTube channel, I believe, but he moved to making historical, I guess you would call it revisionary documentaries, and he's very active on Twitter. He's very outspoken against the Groyper movement in general. Something I find, uh, well, I guess in myself I find it relatable, but he's been very outspoken against them, and for good reason. I understand his concerns. It's pretty much everything I've spoken on now, or or somewhat to that degree. But Nick Fuentes is interesting because he holds a considerable um, leverage here. He is the main voice of the right as of now, and he very much understands that if somebody is a problem, if there's somebody he doesn't like, he will just denounce them. He understands the playbook of power. He knows how to play the game. He knows how to make the money. And the only way to the only way I think you could deal with this, to not be the I guess the opponent of the Groyper War, I guess, or a Groyper War, to get ganged up on by them, is to just to just accept it. Honestly, I think that it is completely necessary for you to let yourself get run over because, well, that's what he did. And how does he do? He doxes people online, effectively. So the only way to survive this, and it's kind of like I think it's like, if you don't have enough power, or if you're not a useful idiot, he's going to destroy you. I mean, it's just evident of itself. If, say, Clavicular um, was not anywhere near as prominent as he was as of this year, I mean, he would have just discredited him and discarded him completely. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize this. And honestly, I hope that more people do. I hope that more people they try to curtail and leverage their influence. I hope that more people they make channels and become commentators and try to take some position in this new um, power structure. Because right now it's kind of a mess, right? And it's just a bunch of young guys. And you might have some like weird grifters here and there and in between that are trying to find their place in it. But ultimately, I do think that the only way that these alternative ideologies may be pushed um, within these groups is to take a position of power. And I think in the end, it does serve it serves some good interest. I mean, obviously, it's going to make the movement at broad stronger. Now, it might make the collapse worse, but the end result is still a I guess you would say like it's a more fortified collapse. Um, just due to the fact that there's more people that would align with the group at broad to begin with. So that influence might last a little bit longer, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I thought it's worth saying that as of now, I mean it might be evident that I don't completely align with uh say the Groyper movement or the different aspects of Christian nationalism at broad. Um, and I really did think about it. It's not coming out of a place of resentment or hypocrisy. And I have to talk about this on a different video, like how exactly I got to this conclusion. But I think right now, um, the reason that I'm not personally aligned with Nick Fuentes is mostly due to the fact that there is this sort of uh, this contradictory and kind of warped worldview. I mean, they're being forced in. Okay, the right is forced into a situation where things have to be done that go against the religion of the right, Christianity primarily, and it's especially for American society, it creates a cultural stigma that is just, I mean, it's awful. I mean, every like at every corner, say you do something that's quote unquote unchristian, right? You're gonna have people at every corner that are telling you about how, that's not what Jesus would have done, right? Or, this is a deeply unchristian thing to do, you know? And I guess you could say that in regards to, like, say, executions, okay? You know, publicly executing people. It's not a, it's not a death of humility. It's a deeply unchristian, um, element, I feel. And that's just one of the things, well, one of the things, I guess, that people would use against Christians to destroy their moral foundations. And you might think, like, you know, it's not that deep, like, you're overthinking it, and people don't actually think like this, but I think they really do. I think that if you're a Christian and, you might be extremely, um, I guess, heavy handed in your beliefs, no compromise, and you're like, you know, Yeah, I'm not backing down from this. I believe so strongly in this element of my religion that, my faith cannot be faltered. I don't think it's honest. I really do think that whenever you fall into that contradiction, you it affects you. Even if you don't if you're not vocal about it initially, I think it still affects you. I think that it eats at you. It's something that lingers in the back of your mind. It's something that hurts you on the inside. And I think that's the problem that it's a big problem in the right that we've been faced with. And I won't get on it now. As I said, that'd have to be something for a different video, but I do think that it is kind of the reason as of now that I've started to, I guess, uh, entertain the old world way of thought, the old world ideologies, uh, even the religions possibly. I mean, I've looked into old world faiths. I don't know quite enough to speak on it, I don't think. But I do find, I guess, the old pagan worldview to be pretty fascinating. I think that it holds a, and you might disagree with me for this, and that's fine. But I've started to think that it holds a lot of the answers that we would find necessary in our current crisis. And that's just like, a surface level thought. It's not something I really want to go into now, but it does serve as a, I guess, explanation to why I'm saying all these things. Um, if you had any question of why I was before, and I guess with that, um, I really do hope to anybody that's doing this that you do take the time to create an independent thought. Don't fall into the trap. Don't like, we fell into it before with MAGA, or maybe you didn't if you weren't like right aligned, or if you were beyond that and you weren't stupid enough to be tricked again. But my point is, a lot of us fell into it before, and we thought this was it. Like, you know, it's this is our dose of hopium. Like, there might be a chance with Trump, right? And we fell into it. We looked like idiots, and it's because we had the underlying suspicions. We were uncomfortable about it, about the different powers at play and such. But we we went through it anyways because it's what we had, right? And I really do feel like we need to not make that mistake again. I feel like that is something that's bound to happen with the new right. And honestly, it freaks me out that people are so fiercely aligned with it, like with Nick Fuentes, for example, or any of the other like different sects of the new right. They're completely obsessed. A lot of it's almost cult-like, and I guess it's I get it because it's all they have. A lot of these guys, but I don't think it's the answer. I really do think people need to think for themselves. I think our young men they need to look into philosophy, they need to look into history, and they need to format these thoughts for themselves. Now, I do think you should still listen to such people as they're it is necessary to both understand their worldview and also um a lot of them have a well, some of them. I think that Nick Fuentes in particular has a very good understanding of modern history. But on the other hand, I don't, I might not agree that he has a good understanding of medieval history, which, serves to create a misalignment in our views, I guess. And that's for reasons regarding them boys, the tribe. I can't really talk on that now, but I guess it just goes to show how he is still young. I think he's like 26. He's still ultimately a young guy. I mean, there's so much information that we have to learn to be able to really format a coherent opinion, and it's kind of a blessing that we have the internet for that reason. That we do have the ability to fester on all this information and all this thought. I mean, we're more open to philosophy now than we've ever been, and ideology. But we really do need to take it the right way. I really do. I think we need to do our best and educate ourselves. We need to become stronger, but we need to get swole for one. Like if things ever really do get bad, I mean, I and it's kind of sad to say, but I feel like a lot of our generation they just would not make it. I mean, a lot of us are held up in our houses, we can't get a job, whatever, or we're, you know, pimping around in college, but we aren't building ourselves. We're just living for pleasure, and that's damning. If it hasn't been made clear enough, it's damning. And that's the only advice I would give you right now is to just again educate yourself. Not like the cringe, educate yourself, fucking retard, but like actually do like some self development, and not because you. I guess there's this like wrong impression whenever you hear that. You're like, you kind of get the idea that somebody's calling you stupid. I'm not calling you stupid personally. Maybe you are stupid. I don't really care. I don't also particularly care what you think, but the message is really important. I mean, we need to fix our shit. Because if we fall into, at the rate things are going, we might have responsibilities fall on us that we just are not ready for. How are we going to save a country if we don't know what needs to be done? And I think there needs to be some humility in that. I really do think that we need to accept that we're not all geniuses. We're not all, philosophers. We're not all ideologues. And we really need to just start building ourselves. And we need to facilitate a lifestyle that can allow for that to happen. Build something for our own potential. Because we're kind of faced with a horrible situation right now. I mean, like I said, I said in my last video, we're the only ones that are going to be willing to rebuild after a collapse. If that collapse does come, which I do believe it will come. And we're going to have to be strong for it. And we're going to have to look at these different individuals, these different movements, and we need to look critically, and we need to understand, these guys might not always be our friends. They might be temporarily aligned with us. They might be somewhat aligned with us. They might have, an alternative interest or two that ultimately don't serve us, but can still be cooperated with. But we also have to understand that there are just some that we cannot, some that we just cannot align with. We need to separate ourselves from some people, and there's a degree of responsibility in that, I feel.